I think we've heard throughout the week already that there's just a massive need for investment in infrastructure across the continent, across the spectrum of the energies that we've been talking about here at African Energy Week. Maybe particularly infrastructure that is built for the benefit of not just one country, but for multiple countries or a whole region. So what we're going to do today is talk about, firstly, why it's urgent to accelerate this cross-border or shared infrastructure investment. And then secondly, and maybe more importantly, to talk about how can you actually get that done. So I'm really delighted to have this panel because we've got 5 people here who are really invested in making these projects a success and can maybe give us some clues into how to move these kinds of projects forward. So we have a lot to get through in the next 45 minutes. I'm going to dive straight in there, and I'm going to go straight to you, John, and ask you. I mean, we saw a map yesterday where comparing Europe and Africa and the scale of infrastructure in Europe compared to Africa. Why are there so few cross-border projects?
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel, and thank you guys for being here. There are probably some reality and also some assumptions as to why we don't see a lot of projects in Africa as much as we have almost pretty much every sort of resource you could think of available as far as minerals, as far as human resources and affordable labor. Obviously, for most of these projects, financing is the biggest challenge, and attracting investors, attracting banks to pour financial resources has continued to be a challenge in majority of African countries and majority of the regions. Um, uh, when you're looking at projects that are cross-border or regional projects, at least we can all agree that many of the African nations have a common vision as far as providing an opportunity for regional markets to open up, helping to move people, goods, and services across. At least from that shared vision, you would expect that there would be more cooperation and a lot of drive towards these regional projects. But getting finance when you have multiple parties that may have similar visions but not necessarily aligned goals from what they're from a political standpoint, from what they want their people in each of the countries to perceive as far as the political environment is concerned, and also to realize that the laws across the different countries may not necessarily be speaking to each other. And so for the fact that there is some misalignment as far as those few facets I have mentioned, it becomes difficult to find willing investors who want to go in and talk to the various parties at different times, yet trying to build one project across the region. So that is one of the biggest challenges.
So
financing.
we'll come back and talk about financing, but you touched on a couple of things there that I think are interesting. So first of all, this kind of shared vision or aspiration for greater cooperation to make things go forward. And then secondly, alignment. And I want to talk about alignment because there's some projects here that involve some pretty complex alignment. So Amina, I want to come to you next and ask you, tell us a little bit about your project, the Nigeria-Morocco Gas Pipeline. I'm interested to hear about the benefits that you think that's going to bring to the countries that are involved.
Thank you, Daniel. Now it is called African Atlantic Gas Pipeline, and it stands as one of the most ambitious transnational infrastructures. It has been launched by 2 chiefs of states King Mohammed VI for Morocco and the president of Nigeria, looking at a vision of integration of this part of our continent, which is the less integrated one, and the continent which is the less electrified. We all share the fact that 600 million people are under electrified. So this project with its ambitious goals is very important because it will facilitate the access to energy and electricity by bringing sustainable energy like gas. Secondly, it will contribute to economic development, and all those countries have many sectors that need sustainable energy like gas, like mining sector, cement industry, phosphate industry. Third, it will contribute to social development with creation of job and local content that will be developed during the construction and during the realization. It has been evaluated as a friendly environmental project since, for example, the compression stations will be equipped with solar panel to produce and to help producing electricity. So, and globally, it will contribute to energy security in this region of Africa and increase security between Africa and Europe, since it can be a way of diversifying source of supply to Europe and facing the challenge of illegal immigration by creating jobs in Africa. You see all the benefits, socially, economically, industry, and environmental friendly.
Yeah, I mean, when you describe it like that, I mean, building these kinds of projects that link different countries like this and bring so
13
many
countries concerned on the
14
Atlantic
countries.
coast, yes.
So yeah, I mean, it seems like the benefits are enormous. Senegal is one of those countries. Tell us about how this project fits into your overall economic development plan, not just for Senegal, but for the broader region.
Great. Thank you. Is it working? Yeah. Sorry. Now, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
it's working.
Okay, it's on. Thank you. All right. So thank you, Daniel. Like Amina said, this project is it's a Titanic's project. That's how I like to call it, and it's linked to our own national strategy development plan. Like Perry said, if we take RGS, we are in charge of doing all the development, the engineering, construction of the national gas pipeline in Senegal. 400 kilometers nationally, that has as an ambition to use all the natural gas that is being produced in our natural gas field that are being developed, and all that is to answer to two demand, which is to reduce the cost of electricity first for all the consumers, and also the cost of productions of all the industries around to develop them economically. A project like that is in phase with our strategy because we are already aiming to do that, to get natural gas as a big, like a major tool to connect all the gas production field to the power plants, to the industries, and the other sectors that need them. Having an, let's say, regional or continental pipeline as well that can be used as a leverage to get more gas will help us get tomorrow more opportunities to develop our industries, to have more power plants, to reduce the cost of living, boost all the economy around different sectors. So it's not only electricity or a power thing, it goes beyond. It goes to construction.
So it's bringing scalability.
Exactly, goes to construction. So, and also in the other way around, because we are a country that is now producing gas, our surplus of gas can be used through a pipeline like that to help other countries also, or even to go up to Europe and have it internationally. So it's in line with our own national development strategy, and answers to all we expecting.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to come back to you, Pap,
Right.
and also to you, Amina, and talk about how you've got those 14 countries aligned. But before I do that, Taona, I want to pick up on something that John said. He said financing is one of the main reasons why there's not many of these projects. Is it more difficult to finance projects that involve multiple countries?
So to every story, there's two sides to the coin, right? Multiple countries, multiple jurisdictions, different risk profiles. One can look at it as a negative and one can look at it as a positive. So innovative financing, which seeks to optimize risk by cross-subsidizing sovereign risk exposure. So if you look at the continent, it's 54 different countries rated differently with different credit profiles. So if a project is sitting in multiple jurisdictions, one could look at potentially banking it at the back of those countries that are stronger, and also credit enhancing the countries that are seemingly less rated better than the others.
Yeah.
So it's about structuring and it's about leveraging of the different jurisdictions. But maybe I'll take a step back and also say that the African Union, the entire continent, has come up with the Free Continental Trade Agreement, which is a regional policy framework that is trying to unify Africa to trade together. And that in itself creates an opportunity for the continent to trade amongst each other, credit enhance each other, and ensure that you benefit and bank projects on the basis of the strength of us as a bloc.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So I like you're right, of course, that there are different ways of looking at it, and let's kind of stick with the optimistic way of looking at it. And I want to bring you into the conversation, Claudio, because your company CPMZ is a success story, right? An African success story. You've been operating cross-border infrastructure for 40 years now.
Yes.
You've been investing in that infrastructure. Tell us a little bit about how's that working? How have you made that work?
Okay, I hope the microphone is working. Thank you, Daniel, for the question. Actually, financing in Africa is a challenge. Okay, the environmental finance is a challenge, but in CPMZ we invested in building trust for over 40 years, which we are operating as a transporter, refined products, 300 kilometers pipeline. And we recently decided to invest. We invested from 2 to 3 million cubic meters per annum. And that decision came on COVID time. The COVID was hitting and the demand was falling down. The market was unsettling, but we decided to move on because the resilience which we proved along these 40 years, we needed to show again. CPMZ is not just a pipeline. We are very bounded with the entire corridor and with Zimbabwe because it's our main market. And we needed to show to Zimbabwe and the port and all the region that in tough time, you can still believe in CPMZ. And this is a success story which I would like to share.
Yeah. So that approach, right, demonstrating to Zimbabwe, and your pipeline's a lifeline for Zimbabwe economically, demonstrating to them that you are still willing to invest, keep investing even in a difficult time. Was that well received?
Yeah, well, that was well received, and because we are continuing securing 95% of Zimbabwe consumption in terms of fuel. 95%. All the trucks going around from Beira going to other countries, and at the moment, I think we'll discuss a little bit more later. But we are now in project finance for the next stage.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll come back and talk about that. So I want to kind of move the conversation on a little bit and talk about in these complex projects where you're involving, two governments, potentially more, right? In your case, Claudio, but in your case, Amina, 14 countries. How have you got them aligned?
That's an important question because governance of such important projects is crucial and important since the beginning. So sponsored by two countries, Morocco and Nigeria, very soon at the beginning, we included Mauritania and ECOWAS as the regional integration. And very soon we create bilateral contacts with all the countries involved. So we signed agreements between the national companies, ONHYM and NPC from Nigeria, and each national company of each country, using it as the entry point for the projects and considering also all the local information, all the national information of each country, their specific needs, their growth and their perspective of development for the next 10, 20 and 30 years, including then in all the process of the feasibility study, the pre-FEED and the FEED, sharing those specific information, dedicated steering committee where all the companies are involved and sharing all the technical and specific information. And then on the global political side, we work on the treaty that will be signed by the chief of states, which we call IGA, the Intergovernmental Agreement. And we work multilaterally and bilaterally with each country, but also with ECOWAS, who was integrating all the 12 countries outside of Mauritania and Morocco, which are not part of ECOWAS. And it took us, for instance, 2 years to update and to bring every body on the same position for the treaty, which is fixing the main principles of a transnational project like this one, and also the HGA, the host governmental agreement that will be signed. So the IGA has been approved by the Chief of State of ECOWAS on December 2024 in Abuja, and we are waiting for the official signatures by the Chief of States. And with this very specific standpoint, we will go ahead for the creation of the SPV. So it's a matter of inclusion, of partnership and cooperation since the beginning, so that taking into consideration all the national interests of each country and working on the synergies that can be brought by this transnational project to each program of each country. For instance, my colleague from Senegal was speaking about the national program of infrastructure in Senegal. That's very important for their economy. And this gazoduc will work on synergies with them and also contribute to a larger integration of this area, and Senegal playing a key role in this integration since they will be able to bring some supply and gas from their specific projects in GTA or in Yakaar-Teranga, for instance.
Yeah.
So synergies, integration, and working closely together with all the parties.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting to me about what you said was that you've approached this from several angles, right? So you've got the very high level support, you've built the kind of relationships regionally using ECOWAS, but also the bilateral relationships and the relationships with the sort of
National
NOC to
companies.
NOC. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can see that's interesting. And you mentioned that governments are an important part of that, but governments change. So Pap, I want to bring you back in and ask, how are you going to ensure that that alignment remains?
Yes.
Because this is not a project that is going to be done and dusted in 12
Right.
months, right?
Right. Yes, Daniel, you're absolutely right. My colleague Amina said something that's very important. It's strong institutional and government commitment. And by the way to make sure that we need to create frameworks, and I think they have created that framework that will allow the government to commit and to make it part of their their strategy, their national strategy, which is the case for us in Senegal, for instance, being part of the steering committees. And because the project, we went through a change of government in like 1 year ago, 2024, but this project was here before. But because the commitment was already very strong through those framework, the new government also saw that it's the benefits for our national strategy, and made it one of our priority, as well as integrated in our own new project, like our new project called Project Vision 2050, for example, it's in Senegal, on RGS role, which is the one which is in charge of developing all the pipeline network, and all the AAGP project is part of it as well. Is part of it, and most importantly, the sub segment going from Senegal to Morocco, we have talked about it, is part of even our project. So it's to make sure that it's already embedded in our own national strategy as we see the benefits. Like she's talking about ECOWAS, and one of the benefits of that, for example, in Senegal, the gas that we are producing, we know that, and some people from Cosmos also talked about it yesterday, is, for example, 30% less carbon than the gas that is coming from the US, 25 less carbon than the gas that's coming from Qatar. So we know what are the benefits, not only for Senegal, but for the region. So having numbers like that allow us to make it one of our pillars in our own national strategy. So transparency, communication, strong legal framework will allow that to continue through even other governments.
Yeah. So John, Taona, I want to bring you in here and let you respond to what you've just heard, because you've both been involved in lots of projects around the continent. So Taona, maybe first, use some of the things that were being talked about there, particularly strong legal frameworks, this sort of leaning on regional institutions, building these kind of bilateral relationships. Are those kind of keys to success that you see in other projects? What are the things you look at as keys to success?
So for me, success on project development and financing is essentially making sure that it's attractive. I like keeping things simple and, sweet, straight to the point. Basically, if you are good enough to convince someone to invest their life in your life, then you should be strong enough to package a project to convince a lender to put money in the project. So the key things are, firstly, there must be certainty in terms of the revenue model, because revenue is what underpins any project. Where there's no revenue, there's no project. Secondly, the structuring, making sure that there's a risk sharing model that is optimal enough to ensure that it gives comfort to whoever is investing, that at the end of the tenor, they'll have collected all their money back. And number three, to make sure that the macro fundamentals in the jurisdiction in which the project is situated are sound. We spoke about certainty of regulation and legislation. In Africa, half the time legislation, or maybe rather should I say, legalization of legislation is there to paint and advance a certain specific political narrative. You would find that beyond political regimes, constitutions can be amended to suit or to advance certain initiatives or certain political agendas. So that is very key, because you see, a political term is only 5 years. A loan tenor is at least 9 to 10 years. So if I'm a lender, if I'm putting money in a certain jurisdiction, I must be certain that if a president goes out of power, whoever comes in, there's consistency, and I'm protected, and I'll be able to reap the returns of my investment.
Yeah, interesting. So keep it simple. I got your 3 points here. So revenue, risk, and the regulatory or political side. So managing those three things. So John, I mean, does that resonate with you in terms of what you've seen work?
Yes, I was going to just quickly add that I think if you could have create a special purpose vehicle that would be able to be the carrier or the bearer of the project that is not necessarily under the control of either government, if there's two countries or multiple governments, and they have the autonomy to run the project, to manage the project, and be the face of those cross-border projects. In that situation, then you remove the risk that is perceived that political change in one country will affect the entire project. That is one strategy that could be employed, has been employed in some of these projects that we have seen that have become successful across borders. But also, it creates an environment for the investors to feel comfortable that their return on investment is at least somewhat guaranteed, because they're not relying necessarily on one particular government. And so, yeah, I would agree with each of the panelists that talked about leaning on regional organizations. African Union could be one of those. Relying on banks that have that are cross-border investment type of banks, like and also enabling the resources in terms of the people who work on the projects to be from the different countries, and not necessarily from one particular region or one particular country. They should come from cross-border. In other words, you're creating sort of ownership across the different countries, and making it more making the project more have more of the local content that is cross-border, and having a buy-in from the people.
So some interesting points, and I want to pick up on one of them and turn the conversation to Claudio, because you said that in a way, I think what you're describing is projects like this, although they need political support, they need a degree of autonomy as well, to give investors that kind of security about the around them moving forward, despite the political situation. Claudio, CPMZ is kind of an interesting company because you do have a government shareholding, but you're, I would say, strategically autonomous. How does it work? And do investors like that?
No, sure. Actually, CPMZ is one of the successful example of PPP for so long, and the government gave the driving seat to the private sector, and with that we are of course, with alignment with the government, we are designing strategic solutions to the corridor, because we are in Beira corridor, and we need to be very well aligned with the port, which is the Beira port, and our pipeline is linking in Zimbabwe pipeline, and for that we created many initiatives, but the latest one, the one we call master plan. Okay, the master plan is a roadmap that allows to treat the Beira corridor as a unique system, from the port, the pipeline, the road, and the railways, until the downstream and end consumers. I think this is by investing on communication and too many investment alignment as well, I think is giving some results.
So it's interesting. You guys are sitting in the middle of that chain, right, between the port and the Zimbabwean part of the pipeline. You have plans to keep investing in your infrastructure, but obviously you need to do that in a coordinated way with the port and your partners in Zimbabwe. When you talk to banks, do they worry about that? Do they worry about, how are you going to ensure that revenue comes in, as Tawana says, if you're dependent on CFM making an investment in the port?
Now, to make it simple, Daniel, and thank you for the question. It's a challenge, because at the moment we have one project engineer ongoing to increase our capacity to 3 to 5 million. But this project doesn't make any sense if there is no investment on the port itself, because we will need to flexibilize in terms of vessel discharge and so on. But in other side also in Zimbabwe, because we aligned with Zimbabwe, that Zimbabwe needs to be a hub to re-export, because 5 million liters will not stay in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe consumes half of that. So on that, we need to influence, to push in Mozambique side on the government to make sure that they will invest. And it's a chicken and egg. They will need to invest in the port because they are port authority, and in our side we are very keen to invest in the pipeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Tauna, I'm going to come back to you in a second. Just ask about sort of the role of public-private partnerships in making these investments go forward. But Amina and Papa, I wanted to bring you back in because Claudio mentioned there the sort of need to structure these cross-border projects in a way that aligns not just the vision of the investors, but the sequencing of the project. So I think, Pap, you mentioned that this is a phased project. Amina, can you tell us a little bit about why you've taken that approach?
Yes, of course. With such a strategic and very important project, we have worked on several aspects. The first one is a robust engineering of the project with the best recognized engineering firms like Worley, Intexi, Doris, ELF, so that we have right now a robust concept with all the macroeconomic and technical parameters, risk analysis in this side. Second thing is a phased execution. As it is huge, even companies will not be able to do it from the point of depart from Nigeria to Morocco as a one straight project. So it has been divided in 3 phases, complementary or independently executed. You have all the concept from the north to the south as one project with all the capex, opex, sensitivity and risk analysis. And you have then 3 main phases. The phase 1 from Nigeria to Ghana by the extension of the WACP to Côte d'Ivoire. Then the northern part is Senegal, Mauritania to Morocco, connection to Europe, that can be an independent one, and the connection in the center in the phase 3 between Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire. Each of these phases has its own economic and macroeconomic parameters in terms of capex, copex, etc., so that we can do it as a whole, but we can do it also as phased execution.
Yeah.
And for the execution, we will create a dedicated project company at the beginning as a model company with the 2 sponsors, Morocco and Nigeria, but open to any investors, any partner, any NOC that is interested, and then having for each phase a dedicated project company that will be involved. So if we come back to the financing, we can say a little more about it.
Okay. Papa, I could see you nodding your head along with Amina there. So this phased approach, you think it's a logical way to go for such a massive project?
Yes, I think it's the logical approach because a massive project like that, if we want to tackle them one time, there are lots of challenges, financials, technical, environmental, and to phase it will allow us to go step by step, to start with something, to see what are the benefits of them, and move forward. So we absolutely agree with that phasing. We are doing it ourselves because even in our 400 kilometers network, we are concentrating on the gas to power and the gas to industries on the major power plants in the country, like in the center of the country and one part of the country. But tomorrow, we also, with more gas coming maybe from the AAGP or from somewhere else, we want to go on the east coast of our country, go to the mining zone, go in the south on the agriculture zone, and even cross now the borders, go to Guinea, on the onshore part as well, because everybody's not on the coastal, maybe Mali, who knows. But to me, projects like that are in major infrastructure projects that require a lot of technical and financial commitment needs to be phased so that they can breathe a little, and if they breathe, they can improve.
John, you're nodding. You think this approach makes sense? You think it makes it more investable?
Yeah, I would say largely because you are able to showcase the possibilities by by phasing. If you're successful in one phase, then you're able to justify and actually convince not only the financiers but also um, the countries involved. You're able to showcase that, yeah, we actually can be successful, and so you start to scale up and go into the next phase with more certainty, with more confidence, and you're able to attract uh, cheaper finance because the return is demonstrable.
Yeah, so start not necessarily small, but start with manageable pieces and use that to build the confidence, build the investor universe. So Tuana, I did want to come back to you and ask you this question about public-private partnerships. We've talked a lot about how the alignment between governments is really crucial, but what's the role that the private sector should play here?
So it's about uh, bringing private capital to fund infrastructure projects. The taxes collected by the fiscus are not enough to fund, the fiscus itself, and let alone think about funding infrastructure. So it's about working with the private sector to attract private capital to ensure that it is utilized to build infrastructure, both commercial and social infrastructure. I think more importantly, it's an opportunity for the private sector to be stimulated. And that's what defines economic growth. Because remember, all this is meant to improve the quality of life for people. If you look at the continent, in the next 50 years, 4 in every 1 person globally will be in Africa, meaning to say the future is Africa. And those young people need jobs. And the jobs are going to come as a result of the private sector being afforded an opportunity to participate in infrastructure projects, hence creating jobs and bringing food at a household unit level. So I would say it's a shared value mechanism of profit and purpose.
So I want to talk about financing and bankability. And John, you again, I'm going to come back to what you said at the start. Financing is a huge challenge. So how should infrastructure companies think about creating bankable projects generally? And maybe are there any things that are specific in an African context that need to be given more attention?
I want to start by saying that being able to attract cheaper or affordable capital is a chicken and egg situation where before you prove yourself, you want to have the project done at least a phase, 1 or 2 phases before, but you need capital to even do that first phase. So it's a question of being able to convince the banks that you're able to deliver the project, that it will be profitable, that you will be sufficiently insulated from political issues, that the project will eventually be completed. You have the resources. So having a very good early plan is very key in being able to uh, showcase or at least provide your roadmap to the stakeholders, essentially, to make sure that um, you can convincingly attract the initial capital. So early planning is important. In project management, there's the concept of the influence curve, where most influence that can change or direct a project is done early. And the more you go into a project, the less you can you can change the direction or influence the outcome of a project. Uh, and the more expensive it gets if you have to make changes. So uh, I am a firm believer in front end loading of projects and pouring resources into that planning phase.
Yeah.
And I learned early on as a young project manager that you have to plan the work, but also you have to work the plan. So if you have a good plan, you have a good roadmap, you'll be able to demonstrate before you actually break ground that the project is worth it. Doing that across different countries that have different regimes, different laws, different tax regimes can be very difficult. However, having that, as we say, having that vehicle that is insulated from the different regimes can be key in terms of having a common uh, um, platform that promotes projects that are cross-border.
Yeah, interesting. Taona, yes or no? Do you agree? Do you agree with John that those early stages are really critical?
Early stage is very critical. I also agree with him on the issue of the cost of capital. It is very expensive to raise capital in Africa. And for me, the perception about African risk as an investment destination is not entirely true. You don't have to believe me, but let's believe data, right? The Moody's did research and they took a history of 14 years and looking at the default on different countries. Africa had only 1.9% default risk, and it was the least compared to many other countries. So that in itself tells you that it's not entirely true. It's half the story told, and it depends with who tells the story about the continent. Yeah, I mean, look, I would say, as a business, believe so much that there's enormous potential in Africa. And there's a narrative that says Africa rising, but we all ask ourselves that it has been rising to where? But where is it now and where is it going? But it is now when we have to redefine what the future of this continent should be. Let me tell you something. Those that have created the first world economy, they have got the same human anatomy as us in Africa. And it takes you, it takes me, it takes us as a collective to make a deliberate and intentional decision to say, we are going to change the narrative of this continent and we're going to make it a first world economy in our lifetime.
So change the narrative. We're almost out of time, but I just wanted to give a quick fire question to each of you to wrap up with. I think you've got people in the room who are kind of keen to push their own infrastructure projects forwards. You've either been successful in moving your own projects forward or know what it takes to make it happen. From each of you, the one piece of advice you'd give to people in the room to make projects move forward quickly. Amina.
Working early, all together, sharing, evaluating the risks, and going ahead with clear governance and clear objectives and partnership.
Great. John? You?
I would say standardizing your contracting strategy, planning your projects early, involving the stakeholders a lot earlier than has been typical, and creating that platform that is insulated from political upheavals and the different legal regimes in the different countries could be key to unlocking and being able to deliver successful projects.
Yeah. Claudio?
Yes, I would say focus on trust,
Trust.
and then the money will come. If you show that consistency, if you show that you can deliver, the fund will come. But please focus on your trust on the market.
Okay. And you, Taona?
Strong project preparation and government support.
And the final word for you?
Okay.
Pat?
I would, okay, how do I say that? Because we are different countries, different government, it becomes sometimes political. I would say to act like a private sector sometimes, be a delivery unit. Let's think like a delivery unit. Let's just focus on the goals and get our mind set on harmony and in harmony on everything that we want to do and trust on our manpowers. I actually agree with Taona. Our biggest and strongest asset is the human resources. Let's just do this together. It's one continent, one goal, one objective, and we want all the same thing. Let's just do it together. but let's, act a little bit more like a delivery unit.
Okay. Great advice and a great conversation. We're out of time, so please join me in thanking the panelists for a great discussion.